Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deckbuilder Spotlight. This week I'm going to be doing an interview with Omar, but in case you don't know, my name's Andy, aka Ghosts. I'm the director and producer of CommanderCast. And why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's been listening, Omar, because we haven't had you on the podcast before.
Sure, no problem. My name's Omar Hernandez. I live in New York City. 40-year-old Magic player. I've been playing since Mirrodin. Mostly a casual player, but I do actually try to play competitively. I recently qualified to play Pro Tour Paris, so I'll be going there in February. But honestly, my passion is a lot of casual play. I like to just play different things. And in the last two and a half years, and EDH Commander has been my thing.
Yeah, right on. It's good to have a casual player going out to represent us out there in the big league. So that's awesome. Congratulations on the qualification. That's really cool. So this week we're going to be talking about Omar's Rasputin Dreamweaver deck. Now, in the last little while, the Rasputin Dreamweaver decks have actually been kind of blowing up, which is funny because Omar was one of the first people that ever actually got in touch with me about the podcast, and we were kind of talking about the deck. So I figured it'd be good to have him on. He was actually planning to be the first deck builder spotlight, but things kind of went sideways. So now we're finally getting around to it, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it. So quick rundown on the deck. We'll have the complete deck list posted in the show notes. Why don't we give a rundown on why you picked Rasputin Dreamweaver as a general?
Well, in EDH, you always like to play big spells. You always like to do big things. And Rasputin is just built that way. I mean, he comes in. If you can untap with him for a turn, you've already got 7 mana available to you from him easily. And you at least already have 6 in play, obviously, if you played them right away as soon as you were able to. And then from there, you can do, like, really insane things with it. So it seemed like a fun deck. And blue-white wasn't a deck that I built yet. And mostly when you think of blue-white, you think of very control-ish elements, a lot of wraths, a lot of counters. And I actually wanted to build a deck that didn't address that and didn't focus that at all. I mean, in the deck, there's been a couple of counter abilities, but it's more the fact that they're just there because they're big also, or one's a tutor and one's a big spell, Decree of Silence. I wanted to build something that was more along the lines of, develop a board presence, have some fun, protect my creatures, and then play big spells and hopefully win.
Yeah, notice it's definitely a very go big or go home kind of deck. You got a lot of huge spells in here. And it's interesting, too, because I was going to ask, for a blue-white deck, you have very few counter spells. Also very few board wipes. So what would you say is the kind of archetype that this deck falls under, if any? Or would you say it kind of defies categorization like that?
I'm not sure that it defies categorization. I mean, if you look at the creatures and you look at some of the spells, there are some very control-ish elements to it. I mean, it forces other decks to react in a way that they're probably not ready to react to. Like, if I take their creatures, then I force them to deal with that. That means half the time they'll have to wipe the board in order to stop getting beat from their own creature. I can save my own creatures, and those saves have effects that, hopefully advance my board position. So I think in a way it defies it, but at the same time you can also just sort of lump it into, just a blue-white creature deck. Mm-hmm. It's just that those creatures really have abilities, a lot of come-into-play abilities or abilities when they're in the field that force the others to deal with them in a way I don't think most decks are ready to deal with creatures.
Yeah, it's definitely going to come at a lot of people from an axis that they haven't really been thinking about necessarily, and it's cool because it's not like a linear theft deck like you see a lot of. It's pretty unique. So actually, it's cool too because when we first spoke about this deck, I don't think Scars of Mirrodin was out, or you hadn't put a whole lot of cards into it from Scars. So since Scars has come out, obviously you've got Venser is a huge highlight for this deck. That card's been way better than I ever thought it would be.
Well, I will admit, I started building the deck like 2 weeks before Scars came out. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to start building it, and then Scars came out, and it helped me. Like, it gave me the impetus to finish it, because then I wasn't sure that I wanted to go as a Blink deck before that. I had like some notions of what I want to do, and then despite the fact that obviously Venser's only one card, it really gave me a focus, and I was able to finish out the deck. I think at that point I was only about 65 cards, including like a basic land base in, and then Venser said, "Oh, you want to go this way?" And I said, "Okay, I'm going to go this way."
Yeah, because Venser is that's one hell of a card. you get him popping, and and he goes ultimate a lot more frequently than I thought he ever would.
He does. If I can put him out with some presence on the board that can protect them, I'm like the first time I untap, I'm pretty much assured that I'm going to be able to ultimate him. It's just getting around that one loop with 2, 3, or even 4 other players, getting around that one loop where I'm vulnerable with depending on the board state. That is the trick. But I've been able to get him off a few times, and it's amazing because I remember just the last cast you just put out. I listened to you guys talk about like how certain planeswalkers do focus other attention on you, or don't focus because they think they're bad. It's like people haven't fully decided on Venser yet, because most people will look at the +1, the plus abilities, the plus 2 abilities, and say like, he blinks, big deal. But it's like that ultimate is what's scary, but most people don't think he'll ever get there, so they don't necessarily jump to stop it right away. And then suddenly it's like, okay, I'm going to ultimate, and they're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, definitely.
and then at that point, it's just like, yeah, it's over for you now.
Okay, so while we're on the subject of Venser, who is obviously like a big win condition, what are some other like your solid win conditions and any combos that you have in the deck that put you over the top?
Well, Stormherd has become a really fun win condition.
Nice.
I've had like a turn 4 Rasputin, which leads to turn 5 Stormherd, and then guys are just left looking at me like, all right, let me scoop it up. That's been one thing. I've had Venser on the board where I don't use Venser's ultimate, but I played Time Stretch, and then after that I'll put in Mnemonic Wall, and then I can blink Mnemonic Wall, get back Time Stretch, and take infinite turns.
Yeah, nasty.
I've had stuff like that. Obviously, again, using Rasputin, I've put out Kozilek to draw cards, or Ulamog, so I have a huge creature on the board, and they can't deal with it, and I can just, overrun them, obviously, making them sacrifice their perms.
Okay.
Those kinds of things.
So one card, there are a couple cards in the deck I wanted to ask you about in particular, because I don't see them played all that often. One of them is Vanish into Memory. For people that aren't familiar with this card, it's from Cold Snap, costs 2 colorless, a white and a blue. It's an instant, and it blinks a creature. You draw cards equal to its power, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, it comes back into play under its owner's control, and you discard cards equal to the creature's toughness.
Right.
So, like, obviously it's another blink card, but the card draw makes this seem like it could be a crazy either cycling card or combo enabler. So what's your primary use for this thing? Like, does it work with a card in your deck in particular, or is there some synergy I'm not seeing here?
It's actually fairly versatile. I mean, there are times like I need to protect myself, or like I need to protect Venser, or I need to protect a creature. And a few of the creatures are obviously have higher power than their toughness, so they're not going to live in combat. But I need to save them for a turn, and it helps me to obviously draw some cards plus save them. And a lot of times you see like other decks will play creatures where usually they're going to beat down hard, and I just need to buy myself a turn, and I need to stop them. And more times than not, their creatures' powers are often bigger than creatures' toughness in EDH. You find that a lot of times, a lot of the creatures that get played in EDH, or at least I do that, people are focusing on the abilities that the creatures have and how hard they can hit. So sometimes toughness is not necessarily an issue because you worry about board wipes that are such things as Wrath and Hallowed Burial and stuff like that. So their toughness is not necessarily as big a deal as their power. So sometimes you'll get creatures that are 6'3", 6'4". So being able to draw those cards and only discard a few.
Good card advantage, yeah.
Yeah, it's really helpful card advantage, and it winds up protecting me. And also, some of those abilities just wind up being great blink enablers. I can use it on Flicker Wisp, which will allow me to draw 3 cards, and then on my upkeep, I'll discard 1. Plus, he'll bounce something on my board to save it, and bring it back
tasty.
into play. And, like I can bounce, like he'll bounce a Frost Titan, and it'll come back to play in a turn and tap something down, and I've done a good job in protecting myself, protecting my creature.
Yeah, definitely.
Drawing some cards. So it's really useful.
Okay, another question I had, another card I wanted to bring attention to is Blasting Station. So this is from 5th Dawn.
Right.
So obviously there's a lot of creatures coming into and out of play in this deck.
Yeah.
But beyond the obvious, what else is it good for if there's something here that I'm not seeing again?
Well, the biggest thing is it combos with 2 other cards, and it combos with my General, Rasputin, and then it combos with, Nim Deathmantle. Now, because if I can equip Nim Deathmantle on Rasputin, and then obviously I also need a sack outlet, which is usually Altar of Dementia, I can take the mana off of him, sack him, use the mana to pay to bring him back, and not only does it generate infinite mana, but with Blasting Station on the board, I can keep tapping and untapping to deal 1 to anyone and everyone. So it's infinite combo that I can shoot down the table.
That's a pretty solid combo because, yeah, it covers all the bases there, right? You got your infinite mana, you got infinite damage, infinite milling. He's kind of doing everything there.
Yeah, I could do it at once. Obviously, it's one of those insane, 4-card combinations that you hear about in, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something like that where, it's like, I can win and destroy the world, whatever. But it's that sort of thing where the stars come together and Blasting Station suddenly winds up being an instant kill.
Okay, so we got our Blink deck here. It's kind of control-ish. It's got a little bit of aggro, a lot of tricks. What makes this strategy work in the multiplayer setting where you might have to deal with anywhere from, 2 other guys to 5 other guys?
Well, I think its versatility is what's important. Like, you'll face decks that are very aggro, and you'll face decks that are very controlling. There's not too many decks that sort of fit in the middle between aggro, control, and combo. It's very difficult to sort of find that middle point, and I think this works well in that way. I can come at a game very slowly develop board position, and then suddenly jump out and take control of the game in an avenue that doesn't often happen. You don't often find decks that can take control of the game with creatures, but I can do that. I can come out quickly and overwhelm a table pretty quickly, and then have ways to protect my creatures, such that a board wipe would only I can have my hand full, and a board wipe would only get 1 or 2 of my creatures because I can blink them and save them, and then they'll come right back, and then still the threat. And then I have my combo pieces where I can suddenly just in 1 turn combo out and win. And I think it's very hard for a lot of EDH decks to deal with that. And it's funny, I've tried to strike a balance between that sort of middle ground, and at the same time not building a deck that is, EDH douchebag where
for sure
it looks to beat and kill everybody and just win every game, and because that's not fun to me. I don't want to build a deck that is like you hear about the blue decks that let you tap and draw cards and you just counter everything and then sit there and win.
Yeah, you don't want to be oppressive about it, right?
Yeah, I want to play my game. If you can stop my deck, then that's great. You stop my deck. If you can't stop my deck, then I'll win. But I'm not going to sit there and feel bad that I lost. Like, oh man, my deck didn't perform well. And I'm not going to gloat into such that say, you guys are never going to beat me because my deck is unbelievably spikish. Because I'm not shooting for that. It's it's got a little bit of a spike thing here and there. It's got some Johnny elements and stuff. It's a little bit of everything. And
yeah, right.
Like I like the deck.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best approach to kind of take. You got to. It sounds like it's got a very balanced approach to playing a game, and it's kind of self-scaling. Like you can play this with a bunch of different play groups, and it's going to play differently every time. So if you're picking up this kind of deck, what would you say for all these people that are now kind of building these decks? What are the things you got to look out for? What are the weaknesses in terms of other decks, specific cards, strategies that can give you some trouble?
Well, I think one of the biggest weaknesses is obviously the fact that it's very creature-based. Mm-hmm. A lot of the power comes from me being able to play creatures and protect them. If you go this route, you have to obviously strike a balance between the creatures you play, your ability to protect them, but also your ability to do different things in the deck. Because if suddenly you get your creature base wiped and you have no creatures and everything in your hand is all about protecting your creatures, then you've really got a dead hand. And you're not going to be able to do much of anything else in the game. You're just going to pass your turns, play your lands, and kind of sit there and suck your thumb.
Yeah.
So I think in building the deck, you've got to remember those kinds of things. Also, I think, when you're building this kind of deck, obviously, if you're taking like this kind of approach or a similar approach where you want to play sort of a combo-ish or control-ish kind of game, you have to remember that depending on your play group, you want to be fun about it.
We got to cut it off there. That's all the time we got. So I really want to thank you for coming out. You've got a pretty rad deck. So like I said, we're going to have the full deck list. We're going to have a link available to that in the show notes.
Yep.
And I hope everybody's wishing Omar some luck when he goes out to the PT in Paris. Because that's rad.
Thank you.
Okay, do you got anything to say to anybody that might be listening?
No, I mean, I hope, if you like the deck, you sleeve it up or sleeve up something similar to it. I'm IT Omar Hernandez pretty much everywhere, on Twitter, on MTG Salvation, on MTG Commander. You can always send me a message and ask me questions, ask me advice. I'm happy to answer where I can. And that's pretty much it.
All right, boss. Just thanks for coming out again.
Thank you.